I think, quite possibly, we're live. Hey, Relic fans.
Hey.
It's the Nerd Log.
Hey.
It's the Nerd Log episode 4. For those of you who are at home who are working on the Nerd Log wiki, of course, where you're chatting all the events and running
Mhm.
jokes. And thanks so much, Nerd Log super fans.
Yeah.
uh, we got Danny here. We got Matthew here. Danny's our co-host, and Matthew's our guest. Danny, you want to say hi to the people?
What's up, everyone? Hello, my name is Danny. I'm a developer relations engineer, also otherwise known as part of the Relicans,
Yeah.
and I'm super excited to be here. Second Nerd Log.
Yeah, Nerd Log number 2. You actually filled in for me, Nerd Log 2. Thank you
Mhm.
so much again. I was on the first vacation I had in a little while. I had taken a vacation for a long time before that because why? Where was I going to? I don't drive. Where was I going to go? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, vacation. Nice time to sit around the house. I haven't been doing that enough. But now I'm here, and we got Matthew here. Is our one? We have one guest this week because one is all we need. Matthew, say hello to people. Tell us what you do at New Relic.
Hey, so I'm Matt. I'm a product manager at New Relic, and currently I'm doing product management for the new Navigator product that we'll be showing off today.
Yeah, so we've got up in our main pane kind of. This is a thing that's very familiar to New Relic users. This is the sort of the default. It's what we know and love, and so we're gonna stick with that for just a minute while we let people filter in. Oh, but we got like 20 years already, so maybe we'll get started in just a sec. So nice. Thank you so much, everybody who's been subscribing off the Nerd Log. We have also like sometimes an indicator that people like are signing up for new accounts after watching the Nerd Log, which is like near and dear to my gay heart. That's really nice to me. Thank you so much for doing that, because like sometimes this gets a little inside baseball. Sometimes these are like advanced tools for advanced users, and that's like, okay, you have to be using New Relic and you have to put in a bunch of data, and then we get this cool thing. This is going to be a little more, this is for everybody, right, Matt? This is like everybody's getting the benefit of this one.
That's completely true.
Yeah, so before we get started, I'll get back on my normal hobby horse. This is a slide that every talk I do is in there, which is that when we talk about observability, we sort of mean it's the first half of that time to resolution, right? Observability is how quickly we can understand a problem. And usually when we talk about observability, it's usually because we're selling something, of course, us or some other company. And we're usually saying like, go get this software, go get this package, or even if it's an open source thing, go add this instrumentation, get this extra data in there, chew it all up, put it in this data lake, process the data lake this way, optimize your queries, all that technology side. But a big chunk of observability time, the time that we spend confused, is how easily we can just see the information that is there. And we'll go back to it again in this session is, think of yourself not right now, but think of yourselves at 3 a.m. You stayed for happy hour with the lads in some distant future. You got home, 3 a.m. your pager went off. You open it up. You're like, okay, what's not working right now, right? What's really causing this alert? Sure, it's always slow front end time, right? That very often that's what we get the alert on first. Is it the front end? Is it the back end? That's the simple level, right? So what we're looking at today is how we're going to make that stuff speed up, just how we're going to shorten that time, because we're going to make our dashboards more readable, or make even our overview more readable. So Matt, we got 25 people watching, so let's take it away. Let's, without further ado.
Okay, sure, why not? So yeah, like you said already, this is like the screen that I think most people already know. I think at least partly, right? Because there's something a little bit different here. I think often we've been looking at just one single like entity. So in this case, most people are probably going over to the New Relic and just going and clicking on APM, and that's what they're used to. That's what they're interested in.
Yeah, where we just were before, it looks a lot like this, right? The same kind of list view. But if we go back, which is what we're just looking at, there's that little difference, right? Where you say, okay, here's our applications, but we also have hosts. And, it's like, okay, hosts could be a few things. Maybe it's kind of the same concept. But then we even have containers here, right? Yeah. We're starting to get like oh, we could have multiple types of things together. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And containers is actually something new. Those have only started showing up in the past, like last month. So
yeah.
So and those started showing up automatically because we already had agents running on hosts, and so those agents now they're just picking up and as soon as they see that there's containers running, well, let's go start picking up data for those containers and let's start making those light up in the system as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and for each of these, we have kind of separate like box scores or signal data, right, in this table, right, where we're not just seeing, obviously it's not reasonable to say, hey, for your application, for your Rails application, what's the available memory? That's like not a very sensible thing. So, right, we're looking at the numbers actually matter for each kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on what you're observing, what are the important metrics, and we as New Relic, we've been like doing this for years now, right? And we've been doing it in all different places, and so we already know quite a lot about what people are interested in, what they want to see. So we started just bringing that to you. So we're bringing those what we call golden metrics to you. And so they're just the metrics that we think that are the most important ones, and start showing them everywhere, and basically bringing them whenever you see a host. You're not only just seeing the name of the host. That's useful, of course, but we're also starting to bring in, okay, there's, in this case, for example, what's useful about a host? Probably the CPU load, the memory used, right? And so we're just bringing in those important metrics in all the time and trying to make sure that you have more information, you have more things to start your if you're woken up, to start debugging, if you're just looking at your system to maybe start optimizing. It depends, but bringing that all together.
Nice. But we go in a little step further than just listing together, right? Because I see we got a scroll bar at the right of some indicator that we have a little ways to scroll. Let's check that out.
Yeah, so as you can see, we got a lot of stuff in this. This specific account has basically nearly everything you can think of from New Relic, right? So we started with our APM services at the top, then we have hosts, then we have containers coming from the infrastructure side. We have our mobile applications that are running. We have browser applications, which is the websites that are sending things.
Yeah.
We have all this information, and it's all these, everything that you can really think of that's producing telemetry starts showing up in this Explorer. So
yeah,
it's everything. It's all coming in one place, and we're bringing you that together, and then we're bringing in easy ways to filter that, to navigate that, and to figure out where you need to look at.
Yeah, so I can sort of imagine where the changes we're about to see started is like, we have right next to all this data, we have a little square of color, right?
Yeah.
And it's saying, hey, essentially this thing is status green, right? Status yellow, status red. And
yes,
what if sort of all we launched was this collective view, I think people would appreciate it because they'd be like, all I have to do is, scroll, and I get a quick view, right? But it is kind of natural to be like, thank you for showing me CPU and name and account and everything, but can I just get the pretty colors to start with to see like what's all red right now, or what's 50% yellow?
Yeah.
Like, what's hurting when I get this alert?
Right. It does seem a little daunting to see a list of things all at once.
Yeah. Like we want all the data in one place, but this is like, this is a lot at all in one place.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so that's a really good point that you brought up, and I think that's where we really started off with that. We wanted to bring like a single pane of glass where you can see all that information in one place, and at least the most important part, which is what you mentioned, is that color or the health. And so we started saying, okay, everything should have everything that's producing data also you probably want to know if that is good, or if it's bad, or if if it's something you need to look at, or if it's fine. You don't have to worry about it. And so that's where this new view mode, I'll bring it up now, comes in, and it's called the Navigator. And basically, it's that one place, a single pane of glass, where you see your entire system in one view. Everything that's producing telemetry, you can see in one place, and immediately you can start seeing things that you need to start looking at. They're coming to the top, right? So in this case, we're grouping all of your things that you're monitoring by the type. So, and you're seeing the types that have issues, they're coming to the top. So you can see here we have workloads, containers, and we have services that are like, those are the groups of entities where there's some issues. So those are the ones you probably want to start looking at first.
Those split up.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Is workloads, container services always like the three groups of entities, or is there other groups that get broken up into different categories also?
So I mean, so right now we are grouping by entity type. You can see that,
Okay.
And so so those are the three that are currently alerting, as the groups are alerting, and but there are other groups here with the rest of the entity types. So it's not that we're not showing them; they're just not as important because they're healthy, right? So
right.
we don't want to bring your attention to them. But I think you're bringing in an important point, is that we're grouping here by the type, but that's not the only way we can group our entities. So if we, for example, wanted to group them by something else, like I can think, for example, by the AWS availability zone, we could do that. And then we can see that some of our entities are in AWS, a lot of them are not in this case, but you could see it that way.
Yeah, if you're an AWS shop, though, this is like so key. And I know people whom this would have saved, right? Where it's like, maybe you're not like, maybe you're not grouping your services that well by availability zone. So you have some stuff here, some stuff there. And then you have some mysterious like, oh, why are these 7 services out and these ones going just fine? And until you look at that view, you have a suggestion of like, oh, I think maybe, US East 2 might be down, right? I think it might be US West 1 that's down because it's everything that's failing is on that service, right?
Exactly, yeah. And this is not... this list is being populated by all the tags and all the metadata that you have set on your entities. So, but there's ones that you can set yourself. So you can go into the system and add them to your own entities. Or if you're running on AWS adds a lot of tags automatically, like the region, for example. That's a tag that AWS is adding, but when you connect your AWS account to New Relic and start pushing your data, we immediately just take in all those tags, and it all just gets grouped here. So if you have, in this case, let's see what these are. If you have a host that's in AWS, right, we immediately pick up that it's the region, the AWS account ID that it's running on, and there's other things that we know from that host. We know what Linux distribution it's running on.
We take a look at there was AWS budget name, and I just want to pull that one down because we have a question from the chat. Dota 2 Attitude, which is the world's best username, asks, what do the budgets and service costs mean for those blocks? That's like the grouped by that's available there. I mean, I know the short version is this is stuff that's coming in by default from AWS as tags. So if you have budget, if you have budget name set as a tag on a whole bunch of your resources, you'll just get it in here automatically. And with big orgs, they're usually like mad for tagging, especially they'll do a ton of tagging when stuff gets deployed on AWS. And so the ability to just use that already is very solid. And you mentioned like it would be great to be like seeing CPU and memory costs. And while you see those in the list view for containers, the other thing you can do, and I know we're going to get into this in a second, is sort of, why does something turn red here? Why does it turn yellow? And you can absolutely, because you're the one configuring these alert thresholds, the things that make stuff, generate alerts or warnings, you can totally say, hey, the reason that this container is going to turn red is if CPU gets up to here or if memory gets up to here. And we were talking in the rehearsal about how you can do, you can obviously configure that like by host or whatever, but you can also just say, hey, account wide, if anything gets up to 99% CPU usage and it's a container, like set it to alerting. So then you'd see that pattern really quickly. So yeah, that's a really great question, Dota, to attitude. But yeah, so I know budget name is probably not that great just because this is a demo account that is not that AWS happy, right? Like the tagging in AWS is a little limited.
True.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, there's also like one of the entities that's coming in from AWS are AWS budgets, and those are basically you can set up a budget, and New Relic will tell you like, okay, what's the amount? Sorry,
yeah.
AWS actually is keeping track of this. It's like how much am I spending in a specific region, right? And so and I think the tags are coming from there. Yeah, you can see here, so you can see the budget types.
The details to actually see that chart, the C entity details.
Sure, let's do that.
So this is like directly imported data, but again, this is a demo account, so hopefully we're not spending thousands of dollars.
Let's see. We're spending. We suddenly had a big dip, but we were spending around 200, and now we're spending around 10. So
and this actually reminds me, this is like pro strats, right, from Corey Quinn, the master of AWS billing is. Think about, obviously we have alerts on high billing, right? Usually we want to even do like an acceleration base where it's like if the rate of billing suddenly jumps way up, right? So not just that, you owe, 500, it's like the cost per hour you want to see as a stat. You probably want to alert off that if we've suddenly accelerated that way up. But he and others have said also you want to alert on low billing because like suddenly really low billing is like a problem. And I've seen it a couple times where like you'll have a serverless function at AWS Lambda, for example, and it's like having some problem with the way it's talking to the database. The requests are succeeding, but they're always coming back empty. So every time it goes to the database, it's supposed to be returning thousands of results, and it's always coming back with 0. So everything's going fine. In fact, the response rate's better than ever, but suddenly the billing drops to almost nothing. And that's a like serious warning sign that like everything's running, but the work is not actually happening that's supposed to be happening. So like you want to think about, you can set high and low thresholds very easily in alerts. And Dota 2 Attitude says, T2 micro is a pretty big instance. T3 micro is usually what I'm working at with my zero traffic site. We all have so many.
Yeah.
Is there, so this all seems very customizable. Is there like, if someone signs up for New Relic, is there a foundation that they can just start using pretty easily? Because it seems pretty like intense to just be like, the amount of customization could be like overwhelming to just jump in and just create.
So all of these like entities that are showing up here are actually, they're just showing up because you connected things to New Relic, or you're starting to run agents on your system, or running them inside of your applications. And there's so many ways you can push data in New Relic, and we're actually adding more ways of pushing data to us all the time. And so some of these things that you see here are things that, like, for example, a synthetic monitor is something that you create inside of New Relic itself, right? You create something that, in this case, it would be a ping, right? Something that pings your homepage every minute and sees if it's still up, right?
For those of you who don't know about synthetics is where we have an actual mechanical man. He's a little silver man with a keyboard and a mouse. And when he gets set up, well, maybe that's a metaphor, but hey, I've never looked into it. And that goes and makes requests for you, either really simple ones or sometimes really complex like behaviors on your site, like going and finding a button and clicking on it, and then alerts you based on, hey, we tried to do this and it failed, or it had this unexpected result. And synthetics is huge as a real way to just be like, on a very absolute level, like, does this full process work, right? Really nice, right. And automated end-to-end testing.
Exactly. You want to know not only like the cool thing about synthetics is that there's not that silver man you're speaking about. It's not just in one place. He can be copied and replicated all over the world. So we're doing checks from not just he's somewhere in the US, he's somewhere in Asia, he's somewhere in Europe, and he's making sure that the website's up all the time. And that's amazing.
I'm just imagining little new Relic borrowers. With
that
thimble hats.
Like, it is a robotic person, but they're this tall. They have to like jump up and down on the mouse to click over and over again. Yeah, and that's really key because very often, we want to have all this coverage of metrics and observability, but there are just these moments, right? Someone says, "Hey, this thing looks down," and without having that distributed synthetics network, it's like, well, it's working for my office, and we've all sent those Zoom requests, the request via Slack. That's like, hey, could somebody who's not in the office go and like look at this, right? Like, could someone turn off the Wi-Fi on their phone and try it or something? Because I mean, that's a pretty desperate situation. Like if you have a DNS problem or whatever else that's killing your service, like that stuff won't work to find it. So this is just, it can be a lifesaver, and then makes this cool little map of like where the requests are successful from.
Exactly.
But yeah, this got us down the dirt road because, and not too surprisingly, right? Like the fact that you can see all entities super quickly here, right? We're sort of like, we have all these ways to collect data, but being able to see it all together is what's changing, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like our new home. You can go from here. You can basically get to anywhere where you could be used to go. So that's something that everything is going to show up here, right? That's the whole goal. You start here and then you go other places.
Yeah. So again, we'll take us back. It's the simplest idea, but I think the most important one is, we think about that midnight ping, right? The late night page, and the ability to say, hey, who should I notify of this? Or also maybe I can go back to sleep, right? Like maybe I can look at this. So, it's one thing to see, hey, some of the containers are in red, right? Like they're not responding at all, or they have really poor response times. Yeah. From right here, right? We are not just saying, oh, I know it's some containers, but I don't know which they are, right? Because we can go and click on one of these red ones and then zoom all the way in to get like real data on their performance.
Exactly. So we could go click on, let's pick one. Let's pick this one. So this is a container running etcd. So anyone that runs Kubernetes knows it's a core part of your Kubernetes clusters. And so this is violating, right? So it's saying it's in a critical status, and like let's figure out why. And immediately it's telling us that there's a violation happening on this container, and it's saying that the memory used for this container, compared to the amount that it requested from Kubernetes, is over 99%. So that's something where you can immediately start, okay, hey, there's something wrong here. And so you can click on this, and it takes you to the regular alerts product where you can
I love the hierarchy here, that it starts with saying, hey, we listed this thing in red, and here's the general policy as to why. Because right below that, I think we all saw like there's some, but like again, those kind of golden metrics of like, here's CPU and here's memory and stuff. It's nice to know in that, like that one, for example, it had like really low CPU usage, right? Like its CPU utilization is low and stuff. And then it might well be that we look at those, we see like, I don't really see what the problem is here at all until we know what the policy is. Hey, kids, keep it down to a dull roar. I love you to death. Just wash your hands and brush your teeth after lunch.
Okay, then do it.
Niños. All right.
It's because they wanted the dinosaur Lego toy.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
This is like I'm gonna mute, and you're gonna see me like screaming off camera, right? Because they can't agree on who gets to put the toothpaste on the toothbrushes. But cállate, niños. Estoy trabajando. Te quiero, pero no mucho. Sorry. All right, I'm back. So, the fact that we can say, hey, here's what the alert policy is. This was the thing I was trying to get to, which is it's one thing to be like, hey, the problem is memory here, right? We saying, hey, it's memory used, but it also shows you what the threshold was that was set up, because that's a kind of institutional knowledge, right? To say, hey, this thing gets into trouble. Even something like 70% memory usage constantly is a problem for it. I mean, memory is not a perfect example, but like disk usage, for example, like, hey, some of these hosts, we don't worry about it. We have nice rolling. We've never had a problem with it. Others, it's like, no. We got to be really wary of disk usage. And then by setting up an alert threshold, you're sending a message, to another engineer or possibly yourself when it's just later in time and you forgot about this. That like, this is what we're looking for. This is the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's a whole like, how you set up your alerts correctly. I think that's an entire episode on its own. I think that's super cool. And I think I would love to speak about that.
I like that we start here. So we can click in and see alerting, and then we can also click entity details to say, okay, just give us the full view, right? Like give us the whole dashboard that gives us everything on this one thing. And that's just so nice because it's like, maybe if you're looking at, 156 containers and 8 of them are alerting, maybe kind of the first thing is like, maybe this is just not something I have to worry about that much, right? Like maybe this is just something I can move on from. And so you can just zoom in and say like, oh, like I see what's going on here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing better when looking into an incident than to say like, oh, I can just go back to bed, right?
Yeah, especially if you're running in a containerized environment, having one container that's alerting could not be an issue, because you're expecting like the scheduler to just kill it and start a new one, right? Or you're expecting it to auto scale itself. But it's still good to know that, and you want to be able to track it, because no system is perfect, and sometimes it doesn't do that. So you want to be able to just see that, follow that.
Yeah, it's very true. Like, right, if we have whole applications monitored and like some of them are red, that might mean like whole parts of the service are down. But yeah, if it's like 2% of all containers are in red, it's like, these are in maybe two clusters, all handling the same types of results. Like that's probably okay, right? Maybe we can talk about our Kubernetes configuration, but it's much more likely to be like, yeah, that's something we can safely ignore. We can ignore until we have a little more time to examine it.
Exactly.
So what turns something gray? I noticed a couple things are gray here. And there isn't gray on a traffic light, I don't think. I don't drive, but that's my...
Gray actually means that you haven't had, so it basically means the status is unknown. And that basically means you haven't set anything up on there. So we don't have any alerts set up on these services. So these are services that are actually coming from OpenTelemetry. So the next step here would be, okay, I would like to know at least, if they're doing well or not, and then you can set up an alert to start monitoring those and make sure that that they start showing up as green when everything's good and yellow or red when things are bad.
Yeah, I mean, the most common cause of gray for a new user is going to be, you tried it out on this host, you tried it out on your laptop, reported for a few minutes, so it creates the listing, but then you're just not actually, that's not a service that's really running normally, right? So most of the time it's just down. It's not running. And then the other one would be like something that's, just being called once in a while, right? Where, there's no performance data because it's receiving 0 requests, it's shut itself down. Like those are really common causes of gray in the dashboard. But it is nice to see this like nicely grouped like this, because there is always that thing of like, oh, they must be fine because we haven't heard from any of them in the last 2 weeks. Like, wait. Wait. No, I am curious. Something actually, I hadn't occurred to me, but there is a time window setting here. Does this thing respect your time window? Like, can you look at the status from a week ago? I wouldn't think maybe you could, but I'm just curious.
Right now, it's showing you just the latest data,
current?
and it's actually updating every second. The time picker here is mostly for this side panel here, which allows you to see, maybe I want to see what's happening in my container for the last 12 hours.
Oh,
so it helps.
Shit, nice. I mean, fiddle-dee-dee, nice. I'm never really sure if I'm allowed to swear on this stream or not. But yeah, that's really solid, because sometimes 30 minutes is great. Sometimes we're like looking at like, no, so the alert started coming in, at 4 p.m. today or something. And so we really do want to see 12 hours. And when you can keep clicking around here and see that, you get these quick stats for a whole host really quickly. So being able to change the time window for all of them is pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
What is the drop down? What other options are there to sort? I see there's health, and then what else is there?
The other one we have is sorting by the name of the entity. So here, I don't know if it's that useful for containers because containers usually get pretty random names. But for example, if you had services, you could sort those by name, and then you could see like now they're sorted in alphabetical order like this.
So that's an interesting one. Like in this view, right? Because they're like just organized left to right by name in that grid or hexagonal grid.
Mm-hmm.
So usually probably will be defaulting by health here. I guess. I mean, it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see like how people tag and stuff, right? Because you can set up your own key value pairs as tags.
Exactly, and so and we filter this by what you have in your filter bar. Tags will only start showing up for things that you have. But you're right. I mean, giving your entities names for some people still do that, and also sometimes it's the system itself doing it. Think of like in Amazon, your hosts usually, if you don't change anything, your host names get like the IP address of the host dot, and then like the region and all these other meta information. And so it could be useful to have sort all your hosts by that, and then see, okay, there's a pattern there, but that's not very. It's very situational, and there are cases where sorting by name makes sense. There's cases where sorting by health makes sense. So we're giving you both options, and you can just choose what's needed for you.
Oh, that's great.
So I mean, I think for most of us, I think who are working on production apps these days, it's pretty obvious sort of why we want this, like why this is critical. And a lot of people will describe this like just we have a lot of stuff running, right? We have a lot of components running, and they are connected in a lot of ways. So we want to be able to see, for example, we know that we have containers handling some of this traffic and that they're connected to, applications over here. And so, we want to see them both in the same view. We've always had like custom dashboard methods to do that, but it's really nice to have like a built-in thing that just does that view. And the big distinction for me, the reason why I'm so excited about this sort of beyond custom dashboards is custom dashboards means that you have an existing problem and you want to keep an eye on it, right? So you set up a dashboard to keep an eye on it, which is, perfectly common. Like obviously with containers, right? You may struggle with memory or usage, and so you need to see how you're doing overall all the time. Mm-hmm. But again, if you know that your containers are calling this other service, you can put them up on the dashboard if you know that's the issue. But even outside of a 2 a.m. page or something, a really common thing that we hear now when I talk to people who are running big microservice architectures is not, I want to see all this stuff together because I know it's all connected in this way and I want to keep track of it, is I have a lot of stuff and it is connected and I'm not 100% certain how. Mm-hmm. Right? There may be architectural drawings, there may be documentation, certainly there's team knowledge, right? When something goes down, it's like, I know that's connected to this other piece, right? But there's a really kind of fair accusation to say, hey, you've got all our performance data. You must know that these two things are connected. And the first way that we're addressing that, right, is to just say, hey, you can see that both of these services are in red, right? You can see, hey, these two things must be connected because they're failing at the same time. But I know we have some more tools to show that sort of help you to say, hey, these two services are implicitly related. So if you're looking into a failure, you can start here.
Yeah. And that's kind of where this like side panel comes in. And I think some of you might have noticed that there's a scroll bar here, so you can actually go down and there's more information, right? So this entity, the service is red, And so let's go see, why is it red? Okay, there's some obvious things here that there's violations going on. Okay, so we know that, but maybe that's not giving you enough information, and you want to know like exactly why it's wrong. So there could be certain tags that are telling you what's up, but they could also help you determine the impact. If you're looking at this service, and I'm seeing here right now straight away that it's one of the production services. So
Yeah.
that's important, right? That's something I should definitely look at. If it was something in my dev environment or my testing environment, maybe it's expected, but so those are your important tags that come up right away. Of course, those are not the only tags that exist on this service. If I click here, see all tags, I get all of them. I can see, anything that I want, or anything that's
Though
any tag
I know right away that's not like an AWS hosted service, because 7 tags, those are amateur numbers, right? AWS will get something 15 or 30 or 100 tags, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, so that's it makes sense to show kind of the top ones here and hide what sort of the full list.
Yeah, and these are configurable. So if you have certain tags that you're using and you think, okay, those are my important tags, maybe you're adding like not only environment, but you're also adding like the team that owns that service or the department or things like that. Then you could add those tags, and then you can make them show up here as your important tags.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's just tags, and of course, tags are useful, but there's always anything that is monitored also gets metrics, right? And so metrics are also super important. So we show those as well, and it's the same principle where we're showing you a couple of metrics, and but if it's only a couple, let's make sure that they're the most important ones. So we're showing you those here, and if you want to see all of them, you still have super easy access up here. If you click see entity details, you go to the full details in the full APM experience that you're used to, in this case, since it's an APM service.
APM, for those of you, and possibly Danny, not to call you out, is APM is application performance monitoring. So just to review, I now meet people who use New Relic every day who don't use the APM side, right? They're sending some cool metrics via OpenTelemetry or something, but just to review, right? This is our sort of bread and butter, where you're installing an agent on a server running an application, and you're getting like code level insight into how the application is performing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we went through, we can see the whole dashboard. Please go ahead.
Well, yeah.
And so Danny's got a question. I know.
Yeah, I got a question. I was going to say, how did we land on I keep hearing like entity this, entity that. How did we land on the term entity for New Relic?
Well, this is a good inside baseball question. Matthew, do you want to take a crack at it?
I don't actually know.
Yeah.
I just know it started getting used, and
I think it comes down to sometimes you just need a more general thing. Host used to be a really nice, really, really general concept, right? That's you're running compute somewhere, right? You're running computation somewhere. And in AWS, very often it's generalized out to compute. But then that has 2 problems. One, there's some stuff that computes that is not listed there, right? So if we go back to all entities and just look at everything and scroll down for a minute, and I'll call out a couple that I notice. Your EBS volumes and S3 buckets, those have a compute component, right? If you give your S3 buckets, you just store files there, right? So that's not computation, right? You can't give it you can't make it mine Bitcoin for you on an S3 bucket. Mm-hmm. So you think, there's no compute there. Well, no. When you go and request stuff with a SQL query from S3, which you can do, right? There is some computation that's happening there. So compute isn't a general enough term. Well, so what do you say about something that is just really what it is it's a collection of signals, right? It's some set. It just means, hey, this is one thing, and you've marked it as connected, right? And it emits signals, and we want to look at that. A really good example of that, I don't know if we have them here, is AWS Lambda, right? This is a function on a virtual computer that gets stood up for only long enough to handle that single request and then shut back down, right? And now we know all the implications of that are connected by a name, but is that a host? No, right? Is it a server? No, it is compute, so there's got that going for it. But like when you get down to it, it's like, what do these things share? It's like, well, they emit signals. So like, I guess we don't call it a thing that's yelling, right? Oh yeah, here's Lambda here, way down the bottom, but there it is, right? So yeah, it's like our term for, hey, it's a collection of metrics that are connected, right? And I think there was even on here, there was like secure credentials is one of them. I mean, that's not even a computer, right? That's just something we need to collect metrics on.
Yeah, it's something so secure credentials, it's everything that's coming in that's giving us data. So secure credentials is something that the only thing we track about it is just how often does that credential get used, and that's still data, right? So that's still useful to have.
So all the entities are just all the things with signals that we're connected.
Yeah,
signals and metadata and everything.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mentioned Lambda because like, when you invoke a Lambda multiple times, it doesn't have the same IP address or same host multiple times. It has a name that you set. So like sometimes you're not aware that you're configuring this. In New Relic, you kind of set a name for your app and you don't really think about the fact that maybe when you're installing it on multiple hosts, you're setting the app name to be the same. But you have either implicitly or explicitly said like, hey, name these similarly. They are all connected, right? For Kubernetes, containers, right? That's pretty obvious, right? It's like, oh, like it's the container name. That's easy enough. But for these others, sometimes from your config or from our kind of whatever magic we're doing, we said, hey, these are all one that we're going to group together under a name and identifier.
Yep, exactly.
That's a really good
Here
question.
you can see, this Lambda, right, is being invoked a bunch.
Yeah.
So it's one of those perfect examples.
Cool. Yeah, and if you do see all tags for AWS, of course because this is
there we go.
You'll see like tons of tags.
Yep, and it's everything coming in. You can even see that there's some like specific tags that are like the team and the environment that it's running on.
Yeah, that's really nice. But so since we're on Lambda, let's think about this. So pretty frequently we have people saying automated or configured ourselves, we need to know what is this tied to? What is this call and what calls it? And there's a way to do that now, right? To like add these connections.
Yeah. So that's something that right now it will show up at the bottom. So we have this new section called the relationship section, and it basically it tells you how this specific entity is related to other entities. And so we detect a bunch for you. So actually just by pushing data to us. And so if you're pushing stuff about a host and then you're pushing stuff about applications that are running on that host, we'll automatically detect, okay, these are on that application is running on this host, let's link them together. And so for Lambdas, we don't really have host level visibility of the hosts that are running Lambdas, but we still
like conceal from everyone. But yeah,
but we still have other information about like how that entity is related. And in this case, this Lambda is actually part of a workload, which means it's part of a workload is something that it's a product we've had around for a while, and it basically allows you to create like a group of something a functional group of entities. So you can say, oh, I want to have all my entities that are part of my team. I'm this team, but my team doesn't just own hosts. I also own some services. I own some S3 buckets, and so I make a workload of that. I group it all together, and then that's and so you can see that this Lambda is part of 3 workloads. So it's not just, so in this case, it's part of the e-commerce team is using this Lambda, but also the serverless team is using this Lambda, and also the entire Demyttenaere is also
Yeah, let's see if we can find one that has some more auto-generated connections. I don't know. Let's grab a host or grab a container or whatever.
I think I'll take a service here. I think they have a lot of stuff usually going on. So
Oh yeah, sure enough. Look at this.
Yeah. So here you can see again this service is again part of a workload. I think that's something that will come back a lot, but I think it's also showing you for a service it's really cool because a service, especially in this new microservice world that we live in, services don't just receive requests from users, but they also receive requests from other services and services that we own as well. They're just owned by a different team or even owned by our own team, because we own multiple services. And also our service is not running just on hosts anymore. And in the past, we used to have like one big monolith running on one host. But these days, we have one service and it will be running in different places, right? It'll be running in 3 containers. In this case, it's running on 3 containers, and probably those 3 containers are running on different hosts or different places. Maybe they're not even running on hosts that you're aware. Maybe they're running in ECS. So we're trying to make all these links show up for you. And so all you do is just send data to us and we'll connect them together.
Nice. And now, can we create a relationship here? Is there some way to say, hey, I know this is connected to something else?
Yeah. So obviously we do a lot of things automatically. And in some cases you might want to say, okay, I want to add like my own relationship. I can't do it on this account that I'm showing you, so I'm going to switch to, because this is the demo account. It's locked down. It's read-only. So I'm going to go to another account that I have here where I can actually do it. So in this one, I can actually say, okay, sorry, once again, let's set the context here. So again, I'm choosing a specific service that I have, and now I want to say, New Relic, there are things that this entity the service is talking to that's not here, but I know that I know what my service is doing, and maybe those things can be maybe they're not communicating to each other, but in some other way, shape, or form they are dependent.
Yeah, it's such a critical skill to be like, to think hopefully ahead of time, or maybe after our last thing is to leave clues for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
As we move into this AI ops world and these automation tools, we're coming to see more and more. It's really not about you can set these things up and then go on vacation for 9 weeks without having somebody to fill your seat. It's that when we come back to something, when we do have an issue, we want to find these little clues, right, that point to here's what the problem may be. By the way, Sir Gomez suggests telemetry emitters, which I think now we can see why we would go with entity instead of telemetry emitters.
Yeah, it needed to be it makes sense that it's a short name as well. So yeah, let's just add another one, right? So we already have this web portal, and let's make sure that we know something that New Relic doesn't know yet. And we know, for example, that this this web portal is actually talking to, let's say, I don't know, let's think of this, it's talking to the prop, I can't do it on that one. No. Let's do this one. So let's say it's talking to this CLM10 something, I don't know what it does, but it's talking to another service. So let's add that relationship. And so a relationship goes 2 ways, right? You have, you can actually say, oh, this service that I'm is calling that other service, or it's the other way around, where this other service is calling me. Or actually, in both cases, there could be a 2-way connection, right? So so you can actually, so that you can select one, you can select both, and so both ways you can create that link between 2 services, and then at all points on both sides, when you look at that specific service, you'll see this connection between the 2, and so you're basically telling New Relic, hey, these services are related. And so if one goes down, probably you should go look at the other one, because or in the other case, they could be, if this one goes down, make sure to also tell the owners of the other service, go look at it, because they might also be impacted.
Is that why you would want to create relationships? That way, if like an error occurs, the relationship is then checked afterwards? Or is there like other instances of where that's important?
That's of course one case.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is just in the case where you're woken up in the middle of the night, right? It's the same thing that always happens, and you want to know, what's the impact of this?
Mm-hmm.
My service went down, but what other services are also down? Is the front end down because my service is down, or is it just just something that's on a queue in Kafka anyway, that it can be down for half an hour, and then as long as you fix it within 30 minutes, it's not a problem. Right. It's useful in a lot of situations.
I did an exercise with my coworker Rachel where we were pretending to do like a Sev2 fix in the middle of the night on stream, and it was the most stressful thing. It was just an exercise. It wasn't even real, but I was like, I don't want to do this ever again. I don't want to get the call in the middle of the night.
And a big thing about this high level view, I often talk about what differentiates New Relic, and a big thing about this high level view is that the first half of what makes New Relic great when it's being used well is that ability to not wake up the wrong people when you're awake with an alert, or even ping the wrong people. Like classic for me, I always go back to the theoretical e-commerce site that's React and Rails or something. And it's the checkout process is running really slowly. Well, let's wake up the whole React team and say, y'all did something. What did you change about the React team? Let's dig into their Git history and stuff. And the ability to say, hey, yes, the front end is responding slowly, and so that's generating alerts, but so is the backend. Now I notice the backend's response time is doubling and tripling. It's we can probably safely eliminate that the React code is not performing, right? And so just even knowing that, again, that stress of just who do you even ask for help? And of course, every time you ask someone for help, it takes a certain amount of time for a response to come back. So you're waiting on that and wondering if they are even the right people to bug. And so before we get into the really zoomed in piece, which we haven't looked at here because it's really not over, this is about covering that first half of that journey where we're just it's like the binary search tree where we're just okay, let's eliminate half of the possibilities right away so that we're not feeling like we're just sort of reaching out in every direction when we're trying to investigate something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this is focused on when things really go wrong, when they go bump in the night, when someone when the chief sales officer is the site's down, I tried to demo, the boys from PepsiCo are ticked off, suddenly we're all freaked out. But the other side is just everything's going right? It's a beautiful sunny day. Now time to open the dashboard while I take a long drink of this coffee, right? and that's the other piece, is to say, hey, when we have concerns, can we click in and say quickly, where do those suggest to us? Matt, it's been such a neat demo. I think we got it all. Is there more? I mean, I know that we have more coolness coming out in the next few weeks, but is there more stuff you wanted to show off?
No, I think I think one thing that I think the last thing I want to mention is that all of this, these metrics and these tags that are showing up here are things that we call them, like I said earlier, we call them the golden tags and the golden metrics. And so those are things that we we didn't just I didn't do this alone. I'm just a product manager, but we also went to all of our engineers and asked them, if you're monitoring a container, what are the important metrics and the important tags that you're doing? And we looked at and asked the same question to customers. And so we added all that information together and started defining those golden tags and golden metrics. But we didn't just keep them to ourselves. We put them in a public GitHub repository. So and that means that not all, that they're open for our contributions. That means that if you have your entities and you think there's a metric here that actually is really important and we should be showing it for all the time, help us add them and make every entity have their important golden tags and important golden metrics. So yeah, that's on GitHub, and I definitely want all of us to work on that together.
Ooh,
Nice.
that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I added the GitHub link to the Twitch chat here. If you're watching us later on YouTube, it's down in the YouTube description. I promise. I won't forget it this time. I just watched a video that I put up on YouTube from a week ago, and I repeatedly mentioned in the video that it would be in the description, and it was not there, but now it is. So yeah, links there. If you do have other questions, either hit us up in the chat or Dota 2 Attitude, you asked a question about synthetics, which I promise we'll get into next week, about how they actually work and how they're implemented. I would say in general, like there's a default behavior, but you can get a lot more advanced than that. So you're not stuck to using a single port, which is what you're asking about. But yeah, we'll dive deep into synthetics pretty soon, I believe. But yeah, otherwise, Danny, you have stuff you want to plug? You want to make sure we mention?
For me, just check me out on Twitch. I'm Muy Danny. I'll be streaming. But other than that, we got the Launchies podcast. We have the Polyglot podcast. We have Observe You Make Observe Face. The Relicans are doing some pretty cool stuff, so definitely check us out.
Yeah. So, all right. Ali's not here to make fun of me for doing really bad shout outs. I have pulled twice on stream, like a complete Irish goodbye, just like, well, stream's over. Bye. But I will say, okay, Nerdlog comes back every Thursday at the same bat time, same bat channel. It will generally be updates that hopefully are usable by new users, and then also cover some pretty advanced techniques. We have Future Stack coming up at a later month than this one. And so CFP is closed. We're going to see some big announcements about what we're covering soon. So do check that out. I believe the hackathon at dev.to has just closed.
Yes.
But at the practical.dev or dev.to, you can look at the submissions there. They are really fun. But yeah, check out the Nerdlog. Taped versions of last week's are all available up on the New Relic blog. So if you're watching this now, last week's is up on the blog. If you're watching this on the blog, then you're already there. And this was an unnecessary notification. Yeah, right? Yeah, sorry. Really getting you now. If you're watching this on YouTube, check out the sign up link below to sign up for a New Relic account. We do have a free tier now. So if you're a small shop, if you're a startup developer, we absolutely have a tier for you. That means that you can keep reporting data forever. And keep an eye on your services, in a really, really economical way. Matt, did you have anything else you wanted to plug?
No. I was happy to be here, and thanks for having me. And I hope to be back at some point to show off more cool stuff.
Check out Mandalorian season 2, everybody. I'm only getting to it now, but it was great. I really liked it. A friend of mine who's a Lego creator was like, "Why pay $100 for this I'm forgetting the name of the Mandalorian ship. Doesn't matter in this context. When I can make a more accurate version right now, and it's just the little Mando figure in the middle of a pile of bricks."
Spoilers.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.